Somewhere around there. 2:15? Okay. So we have about an hour to discuss. And I think what we're going to do is we want to make this an interactive presentation, which means I would like to have your help in doing what we're doing here. Especially those of you who are native Lakota speakers, like Jan Ulrich here. He's native Czechoslovakian and also native Lakota speaker, so he'll help us out. No, he's a linguist, so that's who I'm going to depend on for this. So it'll be interactive in that regard. If you're a native Lakota speaker, you can help us. As soon as my partner shows up, well, maybe I can just start, and then I want to have her introduce herself as well. My name is Ben Black Bear Jr. It's not Ben Black Elk, it's Ben Black Bear. People always make that mistake, I don't know. And I work at St. Francis Mission in St. Francis, South Dakota on the Rosebud Indian Reservation. I am the director of the Lakota Studies program there at St. Francis Mission. It is a Catholic organization. In fact, St. Francis Mission is the organization that used to run that school there, St. Francis Mission School. It was a boarding school for over 100 years. Started in 1886, educated a lot of Indian children. I went to school there for 12 years. When I was 6 years old, they dumped me off there. Every 9 months out of the year, I would go to school there at St. Francis Mission for 9 months. And then I'd have a 3-month summer vacation, which I spent at home. And then, so I continued like that until I graduated from there 12 years later. Then I went to college for a while and then started my work career. I started teaching Lakota language shortly after that. And taught for, what would that be, 38 years now. Taught Lakota language for 39 years now. And one of the things that I learned over the years, the 38 years, 39 years during the time that I taught Lakota language, one of the things that I learned right away, right from the start, was that Lakota language teaching was a profession where you needed to learn pretty much on your own how to do that. Of course, I did go to school and got training as a teacher. Eventually, I did get a degree in education. So I learned how to teach. But as far as learning how to teach language, Lakota language, I had to pretty much learn a lot of that stuff on my own. And so, and the only reason why I say that is because I'm sure there are a lot of people today, a lot of you folks perhaps who are even here, who are struggling through the same things that I went through many, many years ago. You're native Lakota speakers, the school will hire you to teach Lakota language. And guess what? You do have to learn how to teach. And you do have to learn how to teach a language. And not only that, you do have to learn your own language, Lakota language. Not a very easy thing to do. So you have to learn all those things yourselves. Walk out here and pick somebody who speaks English and say, could you come to my school and teach English? Yeah, do you think that's going to happen? I don't think so. for somebody to walk into a classroom, whether it's first grade, second grade, or 12th grade, or college level, to teach English, guess what they have to do? They got to go to school and learn English. Even though they already speak it fluently, it's their native language, they have to go to school and learn English. In a college, not only do they have to learn how to teach, they have to learn how to teach language, English language. And it takes a while to learn those things. It takes educational process. You have to go through the process. So in many ways, when I say, well, over the years, I had to learn all of these things on my own. I had to learn how to do all those things on my own. So one of the first things that I learned at the beginning was I had to learn how to learn on my own. That's not an easy thing to do, is it? You have to learn on your own. You can't just, think that you can absorb things, So anyway, so I've been teaching Lakota language for 38 years. And taught at Idiomatic University when it first started in 1970. In fact, I helped them organize the 2-year program for Indian Studies at Idiomatic University. And I told my main area of expertise was language teaching. And I had to hire 2 other people to deal with other areas, like history and culture and traditional arts, Lakota thought and philosophy, and so forth. So I started with Idiomatic University I worked there until 1980, and then I went into politics. But even then, I was still part-time teaching language for the college throughout those years. And then off and on, I've taught Lakota over the years. And I've learned a lot of different methods of teaching Lakota language. So if you're going to be a Lakota language teacher, you need to learn all of those different methods, different ways of teaching. One time, I don't know if some of you remember, back in the middle 1980s, that's when I was in politics, but I was also involved in Lakota teaching for the college. The guy who sort of developed a method of teaching Lakota language, it was called the silent way of teaching languages. His name was Dr. Caleb Gateno, a Spaniard from Spain, from the country of Spain. Wrote books on it, and then taught languages, all kinds of different languages, European languages, using his system, his method of teaching language that was called the silent way. Anyway, somebody got a hold of him and got him contacting us who were struggling to teach Lakota language. So he came over and to Pine Ridge, and he put on a workshop on the silent way of teaching Lakota. He developed a color chart that you use to teach sounds of Lakota. And then they use these little color blocks to eventually teach, very basic Lakota, and then just kind of building your way up. It was very effective, very interesting approach to teaching. And if I'm not mistaken, you may have a presentation here someplace in the building or in this conference regarding that. I think if Jim Green is here, he was one of the first ones that I worked with using the silent way. So Jim and Rosalie Little Thunder, I think, might give a presentation on that. It's called the silent way of teaching Lakota language. So that was just one method. It was just one way of teaching, And all you needed was a pointer to point to the colors and a bunch of colored sticks. That's all you need, In 1 year, you can have somebody speaking the language that you're teaching. At two sessions a week throughout the year. So those are just proven methods, And that was just one of the things that I've learned along the way. Really, really interesting information. And the latest information that that I'm dealing with right now is the Lakota Language Consortium puts on those workshops at Sitting Bull College. I've gone there and taken the courses myself, and then now I'm helping. They've asked me to help with the teaching of Lakota, but they're teaching linguistics like morphology and phonology and syntax. Jan Ulrich and I taught a course on syntax and morphology. And then teaching methods. So again, if you're going to be a Lakota language teacher, you got to learn that stuff. You can't get around it. There's no way around it. You got to know those things in order to be able to walk into the classroom in front of those kids and start teaching them to speak Lakota. That has to happen. Of course, you do have to do the planning before you actually walk in the classroom. You spend about 2 or 3 hours planning before you actually walk in the classroom. But in order to do the planning, you have to have that knowledge in your background. That knowledge has to be part of you. After Sandra introduces herself, I wanted to have your reactions. There was a talk. I wanted to react to the video that was presented earlier, and then I wanted to listen to that keynote address, but I had to go, get my laptop, so I missed most of it. So I wanted to get people's reactions for a few minutes after that, after Sandra introduces herself, if we can. Okay. We are talking about what we call, and I don't know if that's the right term, but idiomatic expressions. Okay, and we'll tell you what that is.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Black Bear, and I'm a younger sister of Ben. I like to say that because I am. Everybody thinks I'm older, but I went to school in St. Francis too at the mission boarding school, and when I went to school there, it was real strange. I really liked the school. I really enjoyed it. I liked everything that was a part of it. I only had one problem, and the problem was that the kids used to make fun of me because I couldn't speak English. And one time I went home and I was sitting with my dad, and I was kind of sitting on a bed swinging my legs, and he said, "What's the matter?" So I said, "I'm having a hard time." I said, and he said, "What is it?" And I said, "I really like school, but I'm having a hard time because I can't, or they keep making fun of me, and I don't know why. And so I don't want to go to school anymore." I said, "Because I'm scared of them." And here he said, "How come they make fun of you?" And I said, "Because I can't speak English that good." And here he went and he, okay. Anyway, I said, "I can't speak English, so they keep making fun of me." And so he told me a story, and I kind of lived by this story ever since. He told me that this little boy went to school, and they were always making fun of him. They push him down, and they always go by and trip him and call him a big Indian and broken English and all this stuff. He said they were always making fun of him. So he said one day he was sitting in class, and here the father came in, and he said, "Okay, all of you that want to go to heaven, raise your hand." To all those kids, me, I want to go to heaven. And so that little boy was really looking at all of them. He's sitting there with his head down thinking. So he said, "How come you don't want to go to heaven?" He said, "Everybody else wants to go." And he says, "Well, I don't want to go to heaven because," he said, "if I go to heaven, these guys are all going to treat me the same way up there." And so I thought about it, and I thought, yes, I'm going to live by this. I was very young then, probably about 2nd or 3rd grade. I don't know when I ever learned to speak English. Someplace along the way, it just came along. But I never did stop speaking Lakota because I had some cousins, some girls who were raised by grandparents who spoke Lakota. We always spoke Lakota. And then a lot of my male cousins, my classmates, all the way up to our senior year, we spoke Lakota to each other. That's how we grew up. And one time my first cousin said, "Gee," she said, "remember they used to tell us not to speak Lakota? Remember that nun used to tell us not to speak Lakota?" And I used to always think, no, I don't remember. I really didn't remember. And the reason why I don't remember is because, I said, probably because I didn't understand them. So I didn't listen to them, you know. I mean, I always tell my kids now, I said, when you talk to these grandkids, don't be standing there saying, hey, shut up, stop crying, you know. I said, these little kids, they don't even know what shut up means, you know, and you're standing, you're howling your head off and everything, you know. I said, I grew up the same way. I said, they were probably telling me not to speak Lakota, and I didn't understand them, so I didn't listen to them. I said, I've always been one of those kind. My mom used to laugh at me and my dad, because I've always been one of those kind. I said, if they tell me not to do something, I'll do it, you know. And I was a very daring person, but in the long run, I've always remained Lakota all the time. I spoke Lakota. I told my husband when he came and told my mom and dad he was going to marry me. And at first I used to sit there and translate, you know, oh, they said this, you know, they said this, you know. And finally I looked at him and I said, shit, sink or swim, man. I'm tired of this, you know. And I just bought him a bunch of books, and I started going to Sinteglishka then. And I learned a lot from Ben, because I thought I knew a lot just because I grew up speaking Lakota. And he tested me out first thing. When I got to my second testing, I failed. I missed one word. And guess what that word was? It was the word Lakota. I didn't know how to translate it, you know. I said, gee, I don't know. I don't even know why they call us this. You know, I didn't even know it was a language, you know. I didn't know anything about it, you know. And so I looked it up, and here they said it means friendly, friend, you know, kola, and all this stuff, you know. And I said, oh, okay. Well, how come we have it in here? He said, because we are Lakota speakers. And I said, well, I thought everybody was Lakota speakers. He said, no. He said, there's Lakota and Dakota and Nakota. And I thought, oh, wow. Hey, there's something going on here. But anyway, I've always kept my language. And a lot of my friends know that, you know, because I never speak fully English. You know. And when I was coming, I was talking, and I said, gee, when I was young, they used to call me broken English, because I always spoke Lakota and English both mixed. I said, I still speak the same way, but now it's broken Lakota. Because I'm not a perfect Lakota speaker, and I'm not a perfect English speaker. I still speak mixed, you know. So I have fun being Lakota, but I came up on this idiomatic language. You know, I was doing some paperwork. I teach the Lakota Language Preservation Project for the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. It's a community work, you know, where I'm going to develop classes for out in the community, and we've invited families to come in. Go ahead, come in with your kids, you know, come in with your grandkids, and we're gonna teach you how to speak Lakota to each other and communicate. And we picked. When I started on this job 2 years ago, I asked St. Francis Indian School and Todd County Schools to help me, and all they had was phase 1. I mean, for years, phase 1, numbers, colors, animals, you know, body parts, clothing, food. I mean, it's all there, and that was it. And everybody kept saying, "Oh, they don't know how to speak it," you know. And I thought, you know, I'm not going to develop nothing new. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use what they have, and I'm going to turn it into conversation. I'm going to turn them how to use that language among each other, because you know what? There is so much material out there. Ever since I can remember, you know, people have been speaking Lakota, writing Lakota. You know, it's in the books, dictionaries. You know, there's papers, everything. And yet, we're always trying to find something new, always trying to change. You know, even lately I heard one of my nieces tell me that they're going to try to change the writing system. And I said, why? You know, I said, all these years, all of us have been learning how to do all of this writing system, and now they want to talk about something else, or change it again. I said, that's why our kids don't learn. Our kids don't learn because we're continuously trying to change it and outsmart ourselves. And so we keep losing these kids, you know? And I told Ben, I said, hey Ben, I said, next year at the Suecha Summit, I said, let's get in there and do something. And he said, what? And I said, gee, I don't know, I'll have to think about it for a while. And it took us quite a while to think about things, you know. But during the language summit, we came up in the language, was it called a summit too? Over at Siningbu College, the Lakota Language Consortium. I came up with a definition called idiomatic language. So I started doing a study on that. And I thought, hey, Ben, let's do this. And he said, what is it? And I said, I don't know, but let's do it. I said, it sounds interesting. And I said, if we're gonna get any reaction, it's gonna be from people who already speak Lakota, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna use words that have never been translated. And I heard one of the speakers this morning talking about the language, and she said that they had to go and find a Greek word for it, find the dictionaries, find the meanings, and pretty soon you came up with a whole big bunch of words that only meant this one word in their language. And idiomatic language to us, it's the same thing. We use a lot of words that haven't been translated. And it's right in between all our talking all the time. And it means a whole bunch of things, you know? And nobody bothers to translate these things or use them, you know, put them down on black and white. And so that's the part we're gonna use, and we're gonna use all of them. All of you guys, you guys are all gonna have an input on it. So we can put it together because it's all part of our language, you know? It's an example, right? How many of you always hear that all the time when somebody does something? How the heck do you translate something like this? You know? How do you explain this and all this stuff, you know? And so those are things, you know. And it was so crazy because as soon as we came up with this idea, there was people stopping in my office and says, how do you translate this? And I said, hey, that's a good one, you know? And I'd write it down and they said, you don't know the translation? I said, no. But let's find a translation. Let's find out how they use it, why they use it, and when they use it. And so that's, you know, Ben talks me into a lot of stuff. He taught me a lot of stuff. And I used to think I knew it all until he told me there was a grammar part to it. And I thought, whoa, you know, I didn't know that, you know. He said, there's a vowel system. And I said, oh, really? And, you know, and he said, there's consonants that you don't use. And I said, oh, okay, you know. So I had to learn, you know, ever since, like he said, in 1970, 71, 72, when he started working for the college, he'd give me material and he'd just throw it at me and he'd say, translate, you know. So, man, I'd be sitting there. And now I find out that there's many other techniques of doing these things, you know. I've really been learning a lot too. But this is one part of the language system that hasn't really been brought up. So I told Ben that, I said, let's do this. You know, let's make fun and let's have fun doing it, because I know a lot of people here are speakers, or you understand it or you hear it. Let's see what we can do with this, because this is part of a language that we haven't really touched base on. So anyway, I have 4 kids. I have going on 18 grandkids. And like I said, I work for the Rosebud Sioux tribe, and I'm not into developing because it's already out there. I'm into trying to put it together so we can use it, utilize all the stuff that the people have already documented. So I just want to share this with you. Thank you.
Oha. Ja, aktum se lo juhatsan taas täällä pitchinsä. Ja shosho se va shitia wala. Uspekasa. Oishe tona la khotia ku hena wichoye ya Oglala kopticha. Ungana oya ki ona ha. Tuktogana lena wichoye ki ha US ka pichashni. US ka bukipshi. Iche Lakota ki ha tokesh ke wichot ha chi oha ki hecha. Ja aia chian Oglala. Hocha wichoye ki lena US ka pichashni. Heshe US ka buki wo yukchan ki ha yukchan hata so tuktogana ungana wa shitia US ka bukipna chich. Ho as Le Lakota wong la ko he we choi pte la ya ilaguya le chala shwaji takshiwa yo ni chiaka take so ewa takshiwa na ya hena ta yo chi ha oa yo na kapcha ya ungana hena US ka na is Oglala on ya kya hata hena Oglala ka ko ki ona Lakota Oglala ka nishna ko washite Oglala ka ko ki ya chi mata I think I'm not sure what these are called, Jan. I've got your information on a sentence. Well, a sentence that is idiomatic. It says it's idiomatic when it employs an idiom. A sentence is idiomatic when it is characteristic of the way a language is ordinarily and naturally used by its native speakers. And here you were talking about sentences, of course, and expressions, I think, is what we were thinking about. And we didn't know what to call them, so we call them idiomatic expressions. But the examples I think you gave in terms of idiomatic sentence were things like, will you camp here? Lechi tioblecha el nishtimiktahe. That's perfectly grammatical. There's nothing wrong with it, except that we would say something like ahiatihe. That's our idiomatic expression, ahiatihe. And those are, just the way we say it. The other one where, you say lechia tioblecha el nishtimiktahe. It's kind of a long way of saying, saying the same thing. Everybody get up and dance. So these are called idiomatic expressions. Things like, she wouldn't listen. We wouldn't say it that way. It's perfectly okay to say it that way, but grammatical. But we would say something like, nuchewaniche. We would say nuchewaniche. Or, I'm not sure this is a dialectic difference, but other people may say, nuche shlushluti. And he helps people. He helps people. Oyate oichakie. Oyate oichakie. There's nothing wrong with that grammatically. That's a good expression. But Lakota speakers would normally say something like wawuki or wachandowaniki or something like that. He is not, or she is knowledgeable. Dakota slolye. Dakota slolye. She is knowledgeable. She knows a lot of things. Waslolye is how we would say that. Idiomatic. Okay. So these are, things that are sort of the way we say things are basically what we are talking about. We came up with a whole list of them. And one of the things, one of the points that we make is not all grammatical sentences are idiomatic. And idiomatic usage of a language is a higher level usage than grammatical. Because of idiomatic usage, it is usually impossible to create literal translation from one language to another. It's difficult to translate these things. Now, we came up with a bunch of expressions here that I don't know if they're translatable, but they're sort of like idiomatic expressions. At least that's what I think they were. The other day I was coming out of the C-store station. They're all stop in Rosebud, and I was kind of almost knocked somebody over coming out of the door, and Dr. Jeff, so fine, I think it was. He was coming in front of me and he said, unaha, unaha. Unaha. So I wrote it down right away. Unaha, unaha. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what it means. It means this is where we need the help. We need to translate these things. Unaha, unaha. It's like I'm in a hurry to do something, and something's going to happen before I get that done. So somebody says, unaha, unaha, unaha igalushtamte, unaha, whatever, Unaha. These are expressions that are pretty difficult. They're real short expressions that we have that are really difficult to translate, And Lakota speakers, we use those all the time without even thinking about it. That's one of them. Another one is duechjas keka. How would you translate duechjas keka? Duatakon eanach unaha wujakealashniata duechjas keka. Again, these are difficult to translate. If somebody's really talking about something, bragging about I did this and I did that and I did, and then somebody sitting in the audience says, hey, I know that guy. He didn't do all that stuff. They would express that by saying something like duechjas keka. So these are idiomatic expressions that are kind of hard to translate. They're kind of deeper way of expressing. And one of the things that I thought, and I'm not sure, again, we have linguists here that can certainly explain these things, but somehow some of these things are sort of emotion-packed expressions, I think. In other words, these are our ways of expressing emotion. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you're learning a new language, one of the last things that you're going to learn, you can learn how to speak a language probably within 2-3 years or whatever, and speak it really good. But one of the last things that you're ever going to learn is you're going to learn how to express yourself emotionally in that language that you're learning. I always tell people that say, hey, you speak pretty good English. Yeah, the only problem is I'll probably never write a novel because I don't know how to express myself emotionally in English. That's not my native language. I can probably do it in Lakota, but I cannot do it in English. So one of the last things that you learn in learning a language is learning how to express feelings, emotions, those kinds of things. So I kind of get the feeling that a lot of these things that we came up with, like Lot kunkeshnis'e. Lot kunkeshnis'e. How would you translate that? Come on, give me some help. we have all the experts sitting in here. How would you translate that? Or even just use it in a sense. You don't even have to translate it. Lot kunkeshnis'e. Anybody have any ideas?
At the end of it is a negation of some sort.
Yeah, s'e is he, as if it's something. Lot kunkeshnis'e. It's my father used to use that all the time when he was alive, Ben Senior. When some, pardon? By the way, maybe something like that. By the way, or it's kind of a surprise expression when somebody does something out of the ordinary. The expression kind of reflects that. Gee, lot kunkeshnis'e. It's a lot of these are hard to translate into English. We may understand it what it means in Lakota, but it's pretty tough to express it in English because some of it, I guess, like I said, it's emotion, feelings are involved in the term itself. Winkchekchish. How would you translate it? Winkchekchish. Winkchekchish. Somebody use it in a sentence for me. Who's the brave one? Do I lila wachintchen gacha? Ohiti gacha. I'm gonna Chris Ohiti is it. Duk that wichoi tako e na he wichoi wink check check. Go ahead. Wink check check shungwa tolaka kebo. Wink check check shungwa tolaka kebo. Now, how would you explain that? How would you translate that? Okay.
Unbelievable what they're doing.
Yeah. It's unbelievable that he's riding a horse or she's riding a horse. Something like that, yeah. It's close to it, yeah. Yeah. Weeks check shish. I cherishkash. Or I cherishka lakise. How would you use that? I cherishka lakise. That kind of, I cherishka lakise. Cherishka lakise. When somebody's kind of overdoing something, you sort of express "ichenishka lakise," or yeah, something like that. If they're doing dakun lila, these are tough ones. You know, even I can't. It's hard for me to think of some good examples. Monkeyat shinkishni. How would you use monkeyat shinkishni in a sentence? Anybody? Monkeyat shinkishni. Lexi Albert is in here. Maybe we can call on him for some of these here. Monkeyat shinkishni. Makayat shinkishni. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's out of this world.
It's out of this world. All right, there's one translation. It's out of this world. Monkeyat shinkishni. Yeah.
Maybe in Dakota we have a different reference too. That Nakota, Monkeyat shinkishni means you don't have no reference point to what you're talking about.
Right. Just out of the clear blue.
Yeah,
Monkeyat
no
shinkishni.
reference.
Yeah, no attachment to nothing. It's just
There's no reference.
kind of a thought that's floating in space. Yeah. Monkeyat shinkishni.
Out
Out of the blue, maybe. Out of the blue. Great. What is it? Dagwachtika. Okay. Give me use it in a sentence. Dagwachtika. That's yeah. 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 You don't want to translate it. Maybe somebody else can translate it. Iyechuchchikel. Dagwachtika.
Is in reference to your in-laws, like you have a brother-in-law or sister-in-law, you know, and
Yeah.
you make them fun. You say,
Dagwachtika. Yeah.
yeah, you're good for nothing.
Yeah, you're good for nothing. You're good for nothing. That's kind of what they're saying. Dagwachtika.
You can't.
I figured that one out. You see what we do.
Yeah. What is it? Yechuchchikel is the one I had. Yechuchchikel. Yechuchchikel echekche hanke. Yechuchchikel, you know, something like that. Yechuchchikel echekche hanke, you know, icheche. At least he's worth something. You know, it's kind of the opposite of what opposite of what they were calling it. Yechuchchikel. Apa tchuyela. Apa Tungela. Anybody? Use it in a sentence. Dakota we show you as you. Apa Tungela. Here's what I watch this list. Apa Tungela Epatra. Apa Tungela Epatra. Yeah, it's kind of like Apa Tungela. Apa Tungela. In sort of real, he really did touch something or whatever. Yeah. Directly, yeah. Touching something directly. Apa Tungela.
Swings over to the word challenge.
Ah,
So that brings to mind the other word, challenge.
he cherished.
Every time my father wanted to close to my mom, challenge.
Yeah. He cherished gosh. Yeah, that's the one we had here. He cherished gosh. Or he cherished galakese. He cherished galakese. He cherished. That's kind of expressing kind of again, if somebody's doing something and kind of getting carried away, getting, overdoing something, then they say, he cherished gosh. He cherished gosh. Or it could have the opposite effect as well. He cherished gosh. These are all, every time we think of one of these words, we write it down someplace and say, well, let's try to use it in a sentence and try to figure out what it means. It is, eventually, you could probably translate them all into English, but, you'd have a long sentence or you have to explain, kind of what it says. So if you as a teacher were to use any of these, you'd have to get to the point of figuring out exactly what it is that these words are, what they mean, so that they can be used correctly. Because what happens is, people who don't speak Lakota very good are not going to use these kinds of words correctly. And then what happens is, those Lakota, native Lakota speakers, those of us who speak Lakota, hear something like that, and it's funny to us. It's not that we're laughing at the people, but what's expressed is funny to us, so we may burst out kind of laughing, If they say something wrong, we laugh, And they may get at the people who are, trying to learn the language and say, hey, you're laughing at me, It's just funny because, these kinds of expressions are not used the right way, and somebody says it wrong and it sounds funny to us, so we laugh. That's just our nature as Lakotas, we laugh at natural happenings that are funny. It's not that we're laughing at the people, it's the act or the, whatever that we actually laugh at. Yeah.
A lot of the expressions you're talking about is used to, in a good way to make fun of your in-laws.
Yeah.
They're kind of fun.
Yeah. A lot of these are like that. Our entire relationship, our society is based on relationship. So you're related to everybody, at least theoretically. You're related to every person that you meet. So whether they're your in-laws or whether they're your sisters or your cousins or your uncles or your grandfathers or mother-in-laws, how you treat them is determined by how you're related to them. And so that's where a lot of these expressions come in. Yeah, kant emaya. Kant emaya. That's a good one. Yeah. Now, well, we have a. Do you have any other ones? Anybody? Yap shop shows Hun hun hey. Hun hun hey. Ha. Yeah. Ijesha hasha kish. Yeah. Or ejesha hasha kish. Yeah. Yeah. They're tough to translate, aren't they? Because in many respects, they're sort of expressing feelings or emotions, And sometimes that feeling or emotion that's being expressed is very subtle. And that's why we're saying, you know, in our relationships with relatives, you know, we use these expressions because they're sort of poking fun at each other, you know, and it's not really serious. Yeah. Wale haelo. Wale haelo. Wohoye. Wohoye. Lila wohoye. Somebody says something that you don't like, you say, Lila wohoye. You know? Togumushnis e. Togumushnis e ich bemichia. Wogalag ma shipcha togumushnis e ich bemichia. They asked me to give a speech, so I destroyed myself up there. You know, Togumushnis e ich bemichia. There was, we also came up with Spukishni. Spukishni. There's a lady, maybe she's even present, I don't know, wrote a in Oglala, Pine Ridge, wrote that recipe for fried bread and papa and bojapi and all that. She calls herself Spukishni. Spukishni. Spukishni means what? Somebody who's very industrious, who's really active. I don't know if they really get anything done, but they act like they're very industrious. You know? Ambitious. Somebody who's really ambitious. Yeah, yeah. See, I got to learn English too. It's hard to learn, you know. So that's really those are the last things that you learn when you're learning a language, is how to express yourself emotionally or with feeling, you know, kind of a personal kind of thing. And to this day, I keep saying I'm still learning Lakota or learning English, you know, because I grew up speaking Lakota, and like Sandra was saying, you know, at home that's all we spoke, Lakota. You know, we lived in Ironwood, and that's all we spoke. So during the summertime, after, you know, 3 months of vacation, we would go home. It was Lakota for 3 months. And then we go back to school September 1st. For 9 months, we learn English, you know. So anyway, I think we're close to the edge. Yeah.
Said you help each other.
Huh?
You said help each other.
Help each other.
A friend of mine from North Dakota, we figured out the English word. We got to catch people out.
Uh-huh.
One word to define definition for the word achnia.
Achnia. Yeah. Yeah, no, you can't. That's one of these. Yeah, it's these expressions. Achnia. There's another word, yeah, they're you know, it's really funny, you know, that we have an expression when somebody's taking care of a little infant, a baby, and it starts crying, and grandma says, Giganaye. Giganaye. Hokshi gigana. See, we don't know how to translate that into English. You know, it's an expression that has, of course, emotion and, you know, feelings and so forth tied to it. But it's very difficult to translate it. When I first got married, my wife doesn't speak Lakota. She only speaks English, and her mother, you know, her family spoke English only. And they used to say, when a baby is crying, they used to say, pick it up and baby it. That's how they translated that. Baby it, you know? Carry it around, you know? Bounce it around. In Lakota, we say, hokshikigena, you know? And it's tough to translate because basically what it means, it is translatable, but what it means, you know, you have to explain it to kind of explain what it means. So hokshikigena means to make the baby stop crying, but do it in such a way that you don't, you know, like you don't hit it or anything, you know. You make it stop crying. You know, and that's how they translated it into English. They say, baby it, you know. You spoil them when you baby the baby, you know. So you don't want to baby it, it means something else. Okay. Yes, I had a question. Comfort. Yeah. Yeah, you could say comforted, you know. That would be a way to translate it. Yeah. So there are English terms which are also emotional packed terms that you can use to translate some of these words like this. So again, as Lakota language teachers, you have to be aware of these things, these differences. You know, you have to learn these things. It takes a bit to learn the language. Yes?
The word comes from Ganaya.
Yeah.
You,
Fool.
yeah, you take that baby and pull that baby into thinking you're the mother or something.
Yeah.
You give that comfort. You
My-
pretend to
Yeah.
something that's comforting to the baby.
Do something that's comforting. Giganaya. Yeah.
You're fooling the baby.
Yeah. My grandmother used to get after us when we're crying around. She said, "Inilang kape wanang wichaganaya sa hey ukdiksto." Keep quiet. The one who's going to fool you is going to come. And then, yeah, we'd stop crying. You know? we were scared of that. We chaganized. I remember that. Hey, that's it. So, yeah, I don't know what your reaction is towards the end. I just, you know, if anybody wants to react. You know, the video was a good video about why we should preserve our language. But I think we need to kind of step a little bit further beyond that. You know, the video talks about how we are oppressed by the white man and they want us to stop talking Lakota, you know, and punish us and so forth, you know. We need to kind of step beyond that if we can. You know, I mean, white people are going to do that, and they did do that, right? And don't you think we as Lakota understood that already? They did oppress us, yeah, and they did stop us from speaking Lakota. And what else are you going to expect from them? Okay, so accept that and say that's the way things are. So let's go beyond that, you know, and not keep complaining that we were oppressed and our language was killed and all that stuff. You know, you don't have to worry about those things. You know, I never worried about it. You know, I went to school at St. Francis Mission for 12 years. 12 years. 9 months every year. And when people were starting to complain that they were beaten for speaking Lakota, I went back mentally to my first grade year, 1952. And I worked my way up for 12 years. I don't remember one single instance where a Jesuit or a nun hit me for speaking Lakota or told me not to speak Lakota. It did not happen to me. I'm not saying I don't believe the people who say that, but I'm just saying I went to a St. Francis Mission Catholic boarding school for 12 years, and not one single solitary time did I ever have that experience. Never happened. There was only one instance that I can think of in that entire 12 years where it came very close to that, and I don't know if it was. I was in a playground with my buddy, Viley. We were playing marbles. We would make a circle with our feet, put our marbles in there, and we would shoot marbles. And there was a Jesuit scholastic standing by the wall over here. And we were jabbering away in Lakota, playing marbles. And here all of a sudden he called us over, one at a time. So we went over there, and he spanked us 3 times. Both of us. So we came back over, and we started talking about it. We didn't know. So we picked up our marbles and we moved somewhere else, and we started playing. After that, we never played in front of a Jesuit. Scholastic. They were prefects. They watched the kids. Whenever they fought, they separated them. They watched the kids, took care of them. And the only thing, at that time, of course, the only thing we came up with was, well, maybe he didn't like the fact that we were using our shoes to make, marks in the dirt. Maybe that's why he spanked us. I don't know, that's kids' logic, right? The other thing is, later on I thought about it and I said, maybe we were jabbering away in Lakota and maybe he thought we were talking about him, making fun of him. Maybe that's why he spanked us. I don't know, see. That's the only time I came close to thinking that somebody spanked me because I spoke Lakota. When I was in 7th grade, I made a deliberate decision on my part, conscious, deliberate decision. I said, from this day forward, until I get out of this school, I'm going to speak nothing but Lakota. I'm not going to speak English. I'm going to speak nothing but Lakota from this day forward until I graduate 12th grade. And I did. I kept that promise. Never spoke English. Bonnie, of course, Bonnie was my classmate. Bonnie back there was my classmate. But girls were, of course, on that side. Boys were on the boys' side. But I kept that promise, and I kept speaking Lakota. That's all I spoke until I graduated high school. I was a salutatorian, so I had to give a speech. I suppose I should have given it in Lakota, but I had to write it out, so I wrote it out in English. But up to that time, I never spoke English, socially. Now, I walked in the classroom, and of course, teachers taught me in English, and I learned, and I took notes, and I learned English that way. But every other time, whenever they had socials, the girls would come over to the boys' side, or we would go over there, and they would have what they call socials, or dances. The only people I could visit with were, I had an older sister, Teresa. Just her and Sandra. They were the only ones that I could visit with. And so at the socials, I would talk to my sister. She would answer me in English. And then she would answer me in English. That's how conversations went. Lakota, English, They had a lot of friends, that came around, but they never stayed around. They just left, because they didn't know what the heck was going on, That was kind of funny. But so I just wanted to make that a reaction, Having gone through all that experience, in my opinion, we don't have to keep dwelling on, well, we were oppressed and they made us do this and they made us do that. I don't care. If I want to speak Lakota, I'll speak it. If I want to teach Lakota, I will do it, If I want to learn my own language, I will learn my own language. So I'll be able to teach it to people, I think we need to kind of break free of oppression, get away from that. I don't think we need that. That's just my reaction to that video that we heard this morning. And then I wanted to listen to that speaker at noon, but I missed that one. I just got the last part of it where they said there's legislation there. And none of us applied for that money, that Martinez money. If we're serious about reviving the language, we need to aggressively go after it. Get the proposals in, get the money here, and work at it. Sandra and I are teaching a Lakota language class under the Tribal Preservation Project in Rosebud. And I just volunteered. I told Sandra, I said, just schedule the class. You don't have to pay me nothing. I'll just go and teach every Wednesday night. I don't know if one of my students is here. I saw her earlier. Oh, there she is. We have fun in those classes, you know. And I'm willing to share everything I've got to anybody who wants to learn. But it changes every week, doesn't it? 5 people show up, and then next week, a different 5 people show up. You have to start all over again, you know. But I'm willing to go that far to teach the language to anybody who wants to learn how to teach. I get a lot of teachers like her, Deanna, who are teaching the Lakota language. So I'm sharing methods of teaching. I'm sharing knowledge about the Lakota language, the sound system, the grammar, you know. Anything they want to learn, I'll share it with them. For free even, you know. They don't have to pay for it. That's the kind of commitment we need to revive the language, keep it alive. Okay, maybe we're through. Did you want to say a closing thing, or?
My email is sandrablackbriar@yahoo.com, and my office is at the Rosebud Education Office. If you guys can come up with more words and you know, can think of things like this, I'd like to share it. Because when we're talking, if I'm out in the community and talking to somebody and I hear one of those words, you can catch it really fast. You know, all of a sudden you catch something, we write it down in a hurry. We have them written all over the place on napkins and tablecloths and, you know, any kind of paper that's going by, in a receipt book or something, you know, sometimes even on our hands. But that's how we collect this collection. Yeah? Just sandrablackbriar@yahoo.com. It's a real simple, all small letter. So, but you know, it's a whole different technique of learning. You know, because all of a sudden, as speakers, you know, and as teachers, we do have a whole extra part in there that hasn't been out there yet. You know, everything else is documented. You know, so if we start using these words in there, all of a sudden people are going to realize that we do have feelings too, you know. So I just want to share that with you. Like I said, you know, if you want to do community work, you know, we're going to, my boss is Cindy Young right now, and she's the head of the RST education department, and we're going to develop our resource room. And so we're working on collecting books and materials, and we're going to hire community teachers. Community teachers don't have to be certified. As long as they can speak it, we're going to help them to teach, learn how to teach, learn how to use the materials, and get out there and start working in the communities. We have 20 communities that we have to work with. So. But, you know, these are all good ideas that we just want to share with you guys so that you guys can also, you know, share with us. But this is a whole new era that no one has ever taught. You know, everybody else is, you know, reviving, let's start over again, you know, and all this stuff. You know, it's been going on. Every language workshop we go to, it's always kind of like the same stuff. And I wanted to see something different. So I'm glad you all came. I'm glad you all had shared your input in it, you know, and think of more words. And we'll share. Okay? Thank you. Aquí a todos se
Hey, ho, hey, lo, hey,